Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth and my colleagues on council. I want to call to order the public works session. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes, Mr. Battle, Mrs. Lucas-Burke, Mr. Moody,
Here.
Dr. Whitaker, Mr. Woodard,
Here.
Mayor Glover.
Here. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Council members, we have a Historic Preservation Commission appeal for consideration of 315 Broad Street. Is the applicant here? The applicant will be given 10 minutes to present their appeal. Is the applicant for the appeal present? Madam Clerk? Should we proceed, or?
That is a call for council, sir. That is a call of the council if you
Okay.
want to proceed or not.
Thank you, ma'am. The applicant does not appear to be present, so therefore, I need a, do we need to vote on that matter, or we just a consensus?
It should probably be a consensus of the council whether to proceed or not.
Okay. Is there a desire to proceed or to move forward with our agenda? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
What type of notice was given, and was there a response?
Sir? Mr. Baldwin?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of council, when the date was set for the work session for city council to consider the appeal, both the vice chair of the HPC and the applicant were contacted to ensure that they'd be available for the meeting, and they both confirmed.
And I'm the vice chair for the HPC.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
So, when you say when you said the applicant confirmed, how was that confirmation given?
That was a phone call, just verifying the date.
From the applicant, or?
Staff called the applicant to verify he was available before it was placed on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if it's the consensus of council that we would move this to another meeting date?
Yes, sir. Can I get a consensus from council to move this to the next council meeting agenda?
Yes.
By a show of hands?
Yes.
Okay, then, we will move this matter to the next council meeting agenda. I do have a question, though, for clarity's. Is it typically the practice to move these items forward? Or if someone who has come forward for a consideration or an appeal, if they do not show, what do we normally do?
Members of council, previously what would happen is once the applicant has been notified, the city count, and they did not show up to council meeting, the item was denied because it showed no interest. Unfortunately, the last time we had an appeal, the applicant didn't show and council approved the appeal. So I think we've kind of set a precedence where the applicant can show or not show.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Right. I don't know if it's a precedent for that, but I do know that there may be reasons why persons may not appear, and we should at least give them another opportunity and or at least find out what occurred.
And that is in order. And also, I would recommend that we do need to put or consider a limit, because this could be a continuous thing, and we certainly don't want it to be continuous. We do understand there could be extenuating circumstances why a person couldn't show. However, if we grant that to one, we must grant it to all. So I would just ask that from the council that we make a consensus, or we at least enter into a consensus that there will be a limitation on how many times someone cannot show up. And I would ask that that limitation be only one in the event that council approves that particular situation. Can I get a consensus of that in a show of hands? Madam Clerk, duly noted.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. I do agree with City Clerk, Ms. White, about denying situations going forward. But I think if you read the details about this particular hearing, it was just something that I think we had to all come up with a conclusion based off of. So that's why I'm agreeing to move it to the next meeting. But I do agree with what you're saying going forward. But this particular matter, if you read the details, it's something that council need to look over. Thank you.
Councilmember Moody, sir, you have the floor.
My question is, how are the applicants normally notified that their presence is required?
Yes, again, typically, the standard has always been applicant requests an appeal. We work with the city manager to get it placed on a city council work session agenda. Before we do that, we contact the applicant, we verify the date, as well as we do with the Historic Preservation Commission as well, to make sure both parties will be present. Once they confirm the date, we place it on the agenda, and then we typically, as we did in this case, also confirm with the applicant that they're coming once that's placed on the agenda. That is all done either via email or by telephone or both.
Yeah, I would suggest that we do it by email to have a record of it, because if someone just forgets it, I think it's very disrespectful to the body here. You know, we've got staff here ready to address the issue, and just to capriciously forget about it. I'm not saying this applicant just forgot about it, but we don't know that as we sit here. So hopefully we can have proof that they were contacted and they indicated their presence would be here.
And we can certainly do that.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next item, Ms. Jones.
This evening, we will have an update regarding the city's crime reduction strategies, including some of the outcomes achieved. Deputy City Manager Mimi Terry and Fire Chief Nestor Mangelbuck will share in the presentation. Additionally, as she's walking, we will have other staff available to respond to specific questions and or to provide additional information if necessary.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, administration, and Portsmouth family. My name is Mimi Terry, and I am here to present the Crime Prevention and Reduction Plan. This is really a follow-up and an update to council. I will also have Chief Nestor Mangelbuck that will come behind me and give his portion of the presentation. Just as we've done in the past, we've presented a report, so this is really the follow-up of the crime reduction report we have. Again, the goals for the city manager citywide comprehensive crime strategy are building strong communities, engaging in partnerships, prevention and intervention programs, focusing on data-driven enforcement, providing safer and healthier neighborhoods, along with partnering with individual or identifying solutions that would address the city's crime objectives. The causes of crime we did discuss in the past, so I'm gonna go through these: poverty, low self-esteem, unemployment, drug and alcohol addiction. The first pillar of the crime reduction strategy and plan was to develop a safe and effective workplace. We have an ongoing initiative with the Human Resources Department that introduces, or what we've been doing is crime police department recruitment and retention.
We funded retention bonuses, police officer salaries adjusted to current market rates within the region, recruitment incentives for recommending applicants, sign-on bonuses, and addressing pay compression. These are the current initiatives that we have in place. The second pillar is crime prevention, intervention, and community engagement. To address the root cause of violence by promoting and strengthening partnerships within the community to help ensure collaborative problem solving, ethical and unbiased policing, and increase community trust and confidence in the city. What we've been doing is we've developed a program providing direct payments to individuals and families. We're prioritizing roof programs. We continue researching and securing alternative locations for youth programs. This is what we partner with PRHA. This is what we partner with a few of the other organizations within the community, which leads us to Portsmouth has partnered with several organizations and community activists, including Big Homies, Give Back to the Block, Boys Inc., Saran Day, PRHA, and city staff to provide holiday-themed celebrations, including toys, hot meals, activities. They did a Santa. They did Grinch games during the holidays at Swanson Homes, Southside and Dales Homes, Lexington Place, London Oaks, and Mallet Grove Cove. Through these partnerships, we were able to provide gifts to more than 300 children during the holiday season, creating confidence, enhancing self-esteem, and self-worth. Partnerships would Give Back to the Block and Blacktop Basketball to host a community day and a flag football tournament at Cavalier Manor Athletic Complex that enabled over 50 kids to hear a message about stopping the violence. We partnered with Deshaun Green and the Green Hope Foundation and offered a free basketball clinic to reinforce nonviolent behaviors, hired additional recreation staff for after-school programs in elementary, middle schools, and PRHA properties. We continue recruiting and partnering with local businesses, instructors, and facilities for additional youth programs. We partner with Portsmouth Public Schools to send an interest survey to all middle and high school students. It's direct information to enhance youth programs, and we're streamlining events to enable more events to bring communities together. Some of those events that we have lined up are, we have the March for the Homeless Support, which is the coldest night of the year, February 26th. We're working with Craddock for a Pride Festival. We have a High Tide event, and we have a National Day of Prayer, and we have others in the works. Portsmouth's community partnerships. I won't go through all of them, but I did mention some on the previous slide. But I just wanted to give for the community to actually see all of the different partnerships we have within the community to make these things happen, because we can't do it alone. We reach out and we ensure that the community is involved. The third pillar is crime prevention and reduction. This reduces violent crime and maximizes public safety outcomes by prioritizing utilization for enforcement and to investigate resources. We partnered with local high schools for art students to design and paint a theme wall inside the police administrative building, and we are doing that to build trust. We partner with the FBI, the DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshal Services to bring additional resources to address crime. Funded 2 violent interrupters to serve as a liaison between the community and the police department. We conducted 40 saturated patrols to problem high gun violence areas to deter crime. We handled 36 homicides in 2021. Detectives cleared 54 of those cases with only 4 detectives. The national average for homicide clearance is 51%. They handle an additional 354 other violent crimes at the same time. We developed Portsmouth Police Department's first ever in-house management leadership school to improve the performance of the agency. We have 250 weapons were seized during the police operations last year as a result of strategic efforts. We reconstructed or restructured the organization, stripping down ancillary functions and placed those persons in a patrol function to address service calls and violent crime. We plan to implement our Operation Ceasefire Project Safe Neighborhoods program with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We created a schedule for quarterly manpower intense enforcement operations. These are the community sweeps that we do. We initiated a Red Ball Police initiative due to several murders in a short time frame. Community successes to date. Forgive me, that's a lot. So I didn't want to read each one of them, but I think it's very important that I do speak to them. The youth programs bring children outside the neighborhoods to events used to engage youth and provide mentorship opportunities. Developed and implemented various youth programs throughout the city, including 3 in PRHA communities. We have violence interrupters. We have crime prevention strategies, unseen to producing the unseen, preventing crimes. We improve street lighting to deter crime. Video surveillance footage leading to arrests. Implemented blight property reduction strategies. Community walks. Taking guns off the streets. Joint partnerships with fire, police, and behavioral health care to establish a crisis response team to accommodate Marcus Alert's mental health crisis. We partner with several support specialists, mental health crisis response teams to support violent crimes. Next steps. Next steps, we actually, the last council meeting had shot spotters to come and give a presentation to council so that you are aware of the direction that we're looking to actually move. So the next steps would be implement gunshot detection technology, continue aggressive police officer recruitment and retention programs, all-hand response to general impactful results, improve data collection for improved processes, engaging residents more for the Bloomberg Harvard Innovative Track, which Chief was come and speak to you about. Explore other technology solutions to deter crime. Expand mental health outreach opportunities, which we have the director for BHS here this evening if you have any questions. And to promote special events that create unity within our organization and neighborhood. And I will.
Thank you, Mimi. Mayor, members of council, I'm here to present the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, and just to give you a big overview of where this program is going to take us. And it's actually going to supplement the programs and initiatives that the city already has in place. So the big overview is that the city of Portsmouth, along with Mayor Shannon Glover, is one of 38 mayors and 38 cities around the world that is chosen for the class of 2022. So this initiative is going to be centered around going into the neighborhoods, the residents, and channeling their ideas and putting them into formal programs to help us identify ways to combat everything that has led us to high crime within the city. We are the 5th class through the Bloomberg Harvard initiative. They started in 2017, and it has been a learning process for city staff. And we are going to take this out over the next few months by getting these residents to come out and help share the ideas and the information to help us better suit them, especially in the areas of need where we have the data that shows where the high crime is occurring. So, core team members, we just selected them this year. This is going to be a 10-month program. We have representation by many departments within the city, and a lot of it is geared towards the last section where it talks about we're aiming to reduce poverty, looking at low self-esteem in youth, reducing unemployment, and the programs that reduce alcohol and drug addiction. So through behavioral healthcare services, we have identified that Mr. Nathan Woodard will head up the innovative track for us, and that gives us someone with strong leadership to help put this program together. We've identified Parks and Recreation, Mark Pomachuk. He will be our project manager to keep us together and keep us informed on this project. The police department, we have selected the new assistant chief, Nashayla Nelson, to be the learning lead. She will be the lead person to take all the new information that we have learned, put it in a package to be able to present to the mayor and council, so you know where we stand with progress within the program. And lastly, for representation from Waste Management, Ms. Mary Watson, she will head up the equity and community lead. So that is taking people from within the community, interfacing it with the rest of the core team members. We're going to develop those programs, and she will verify that, one, we have equity representation within the neighborhoods, and two, a true unified front from city staff and the residents. So this is my last slide, and the good thing about being selected through this program is that we have a lot of programs that are already in place, and we are going to be able to basically take it like a case study and test all of the programs that we have against the effectiveness along the community. So with that, not only does this program and being selected as program help the citizens and us, it also puts us in a position to where our data collection and our information that we bring back from these programs will put us in a better line for grants and other funding opportunities to really keep this progress going. The other aspect of this program is that we are able to take all of this information, we will put it around the center of all of the citizens and the residents, and truly bring in that feedback, because for the past several months, we've had a lot of feedback from the citizens through the speakers, and we've been taking the notes down, and we've been really pushing that effort. So with that, as the fire chief, our motto is focus on the community, and we are going to take that energy and that attitude, bring it to this core group, and we are going to make the changes that we need for these programs to help reduce the crime in the city.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
My favorite. Any questions? That concludes the presentation, crime reduction strategy presentation.
Well, I would like to, Dr. Whitaker, you have a question?
Well, question and statement.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
You have the floor.
Thank you for the presentation and information. We know that the root cause of crime, and we've talked about it, is the poverty that we see not only in Portsmouth but across the nation. And although many of these things that are looking to be put in place, if we're not addressing poverty, then those efforts will be in vain. This body is here to pass policies, put a budget in place. I would hope that our city manager, with our upcoming budget, we know that as last year we funded education. That's a key component to attacking the poverty. I noticed in the presentation that you have mental Yeah, mental health, I think as a next step. If that's correct. I think I saw that in the, expand mental health outreach opportunities. The amount of crime that has occurred, particularly the killings, has caused quite a bit of trauma in our communities amongst our children, that we need to make sure that the upcoming budget, if we're really going to be serious about addressing the issue of crime, that we have to take a serious look at the mental health that we're providing. And when we talk about expanding it, I'm thinking that there's going to be, in the budget presentation, some type of monetary amounts put towards that. Is that the case?
Well, Dr. Whitaker, what I will just speak to is behavioral health has the dollars. I don't think that, from my vantage point, I don't think it's so much as the dollars. I think it's reaching out in the community to pull those people in, because a lot of people in the community don't realize we have this organization or this opportunity for them. And so that's why we actually have people in organizations now that we are adding to the list of trauma. We have people, when there's an incident, they show up. We call them, they show up, and they direct them to the services. They do an intake. They try to understand what's going on. They get the mental stability of the person based on the incident. So again, I'm not, based on budget, based on what I know from behavioral health services, it's not the dollars, it's the people, the outreach to pull them in.
So as far as the outreach, does that involve working with our school system, where our children are? I mean, how, and you can't answer it all tonight, but would like to know how that would be operationalized, because it's not like this is some type of new concept. And if I'm hearing you're saying that the resources have been there, we just haven't been putting them in place.
Right, and if I may, just for two seconds, if I could ask the director to just quickly give you a brief summary of the programs that we already have, so that you could be aware of what is actually there in place, but we're trying to promote the services. We're trying to get people to understand, and maybe the outreach may not have been there to the capacity that it is currently under the new city manager, but at least we're making that effort, and we're trying to figure out where's the link? Why don't they know? Why don't they understand that we have these programs in place? What more do we need to do? What can we expand upon? Having an intake person in the community has been a benefit to the city. We were able to help a young lady, the young woman who her daughter was shot in the head at 17. We were able to reach out to her, get her a case manager, get her a worker. We have some things where we had some people who were out of their homes, and we were paying for their hotels so they could stay and have a relief during this crisis that they were in.
Well, I mean, systematically, has there been a link with our services and where our children are mainly in the schools? And so that may be a relationship that we need, because I know the schools have been discussing about putting counselors in the schools. So I'm just saying that mental health piece is going to be critical because of the significant trauma that we see in our communities that create cycles. And also with the policies and that will come before council, things such as dealing with not only just jobs, but we've mentioned before about living wages and enforcing contracts that are being applied with equity so that persons are being hired. As far as the housing issue that I don't see in here, those community block grant funds that we talked about, how is that being communicated to our citizens? And so when we talk about trying to do these things in the pillars, there's some major issues as far as poverty are concerned: education, mental health, and housing, living wages, that we need to make sure that are presented to council with policies we're going to put in place, and then operationalizing them because there's been neglect for too long. And I know we have the resources to address it.
Which is going to be the segue into my next presentation. But I didn't know if you wanted to talk to the director of the BHS.
So before we ask Director Woodard to come up, Councilmember Moody has a question.
Yes,
And
sir.
sir, you have the floor.
I don't know if it's so much a question as the presentation. Thank you both for the presentations. They're nice. And, you know, I think it addresses more of the social aspect of it. But we're in an emergency situation. We've got people getting killed. We've got cars getting hijacked. We've got businesses getting robbed. And I didn't hear anything in that's going to immediately address those things. The chief sent us something earlier in the week that was an emergency response plan. And I think that's where we are. We have an emergency. You know, sending people checks, educating them, addressing trauma after the fact. Those are niceties. And I look at most of those things. If crime was excellent, in other words, low in our city, I'm sure this plan would, implemented correctly, would keep the numbers low and keep our city safe. But we're in an emergency situation. What I want to hear is we're 70 plus police officers short. I want to know, when can we expect to have the right number of officers on the street again? I want the chief addressed cooperation with the state police, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and collaboration with the Sheriff's Department. I want to know how that's going to manifest itself so our people, when they're out, are feeling safe. He mentioned all off-duty officers have been recalled. I don't know what that's going to mean as far as the number of officers on the street. And I don't subscribe to this thing that you can't arrest yourself out of crime. I think you can. I think that's an aspect of it that we cannot forget. But we have an emergency. I mean, all these social aspects they're nice when everything's going along fine, and if you want to keep the numbers fine, but they're not going to get immediate relief as we sit here tonight. And I just want to make that known. I want to see some action. I want to see some arrest. Some of these people locked up and put away. We got to come to the realization there are bad people in society that do bad things. And I don't care how well you treat them, they're going to do bad things. And I think you have to accept that at some point in time. And I think we lose sight of that, trying to do all these niceties. And I just don't want us to lose sight of that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Moody. And City Manager Jones, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, and I will also allow the chief to respond if need be. But I wanted to reiterate that we are coming at crime in our city from a multifaceted approach. It doesn't negate the fact that we are looking at enforcement. As a matter of fact, the first slide focused on us stopping the bleeding in the police department to ensure that we can be competitive and have more police officers on the ground and able to make those arrests. But we also recognize that we have to look at this broadly and deal with other issues in this community as we see them, and use all the resources we have and leverage those resources to deal with it on a long-term basis and not just a short-term basis. So we are looking at prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And we're doing it all with a sense of rigor and creativity and partnerships and understanding that there is concern in this community. We want to address it. Some of the latest initiatives that were just implemented, on one of the slides, it referenced a red ball. That's a technical term that's used when you pull all your resources and make sure that they are present on the ground in those high priority areas. We're looking to invest in technology that's going to help us use our police officers more strategically. So it's not as if we're looking at this from one side or the other. We're trying to balance all the needs and move forward appropriately.
Councilman Battle, did I see your hand prior to, sir? Okay. Councilmember Moody, sir, you have the floor.
One other thing, the chief's emergency response plan, about a week after, or not quite a week, I guess, 3 days after, I ran in 2 different locations in 2 different ranks of police officers, and they were not aware of any of these things that I just mentioned. So I'm certain word will get down to the rank and file, but I was a little disappointed that perhaps we got the communication before it got out to the people that are going to be implementing this emergency response. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief, did you want to come forward to make any comments, or the floor is yours, sir?
Council members, as the chief comes forward, could you click off your request to speak buttons, please?
Good evening, Mayor, everyone, council. So I'm not sure which officers that you ran into, sir. It may not have affected them because the people who were assigned on the streets may not have been involved. But I can tell you what the task force that I put together has done so far. I wish I had the dollar amount and the man hours. They're still researching that so we can know what it's going to cost us. So far, they've done 3 surveillance operations, numerous field interviews, which aren't that many, about 9, 8 traffic checkpoints, 45 traffic stops, 32 summons, 7 seized firearms, 8 arrests, 1 warrant served, 1 DUI, about 14 foot patrols, about 279 focused area patrols. A focused area patrol is just that. Those are those hot spots where we have those shots fired, where we know things are going on. So we have 279 of those. That's putting people in the areas that are affected. They've got about a half ounce of marijuana, 6 caps of heroin, and 0.1 ounces of cocaine. That's what we've got from our efforts so far. What I can tell you is it can't be sustained. When I said I pulled everything, I pulled everything. They have to rest. They have families. They have a life. So they're going to have to rest at some point, or they're going to start making mistakes. So the ideal is to hit what we're doing hard, stop, regroup, rest, go back, repeat. Now, I know that we were fielding an additional, I think, 25 plus people per shift. On average, we have about 14 to 15 officers on the street at any given time. It's more than that during the day shift because we count in our detectives and some other units that we have out floating around. So we did that. Plus, we had some of our federal partners come in, and we made our presence known in the community. I received positive comments from the community, from people who called my office and say, I see what you're doing. I see your people out here where they're supposed to be. Now, that's a great feedback to me. I don't get that every day, but I got that in this instance. I queried my staff about how much it was going to cost us and the personnel hours involved, so we can get that information. I'll provide that back to you. Any more questions for me or anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And Director Woodard, sir, are you with us?
Oh, he stepped away.
Director Woodard stepped away. Thank you very much.
We can bring him back another day.
Yes, ma'am. If I could just take a moment to make a statement. One of the things that I see happening, we were at a Civic League meeting last night in the city of Portsmouth, and one of the Civic League president and many citizens in the group indicated that they were grateful to see a a higher level of law enforcement presence in the community, and it is noticeable. They also made mention that we are making arrests, which again, to my colleagues' concern, is what we need to do in maintaining a safe community. So I just want to convey to our police officers, to our manager and her team, that you all are doing the work, and I would encourage you to continue to do the work. It's not easy doing your job, and we want you to know that you do have our support, and we need you to be the best that you can be in helping us to make our streets safe. So I wanted to convey that on behalf of myself and my colleagues on council. Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Battle, sir, you have the floor.
I too, Chief, has had a number of calls complimenting you on the recent surge in protection. They're grateful, and I just want to let you know that as well. Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, I just want to echo what the city manager said, and I think it's a very wise counsel and the approach that we can't arrest our way out of crime. And the fact that you are looking at it from a multi-point of view, that's what the data is suggesting. All of this anecdotal, off the top of the head things, we want to work with what has been proven. And so I want to say that there is an aspect that law enforcement must play. And at the same time, there's a pipeline that continues that we have to cut it off. And I believe that's where those social programs come into play, because at some point you got to fix the road. And so I want to commend you, but we want to remain aggressive. As I said, there's a funding issue that we want to make sure. I would like to get more information in regards to, as we look at addressing the poverty issue, as I said, the housing. We have these community development block grant funds. I think we talked about that earlier when we were talking about providing some ARPA funds for mortgage assistance and rent assistance, and you mentioned about that's what the community development block grant funds are supposed to be for.
Well, they use their community block grant for sub-recipients to do that in the community or for our citizens. But we have something that we were going to present moving forward that meant satisfy your request.
Okay, all right.
Councilman Battle, sir, you have the floor.
I would like to say to our citizens, mothers and fathers, when you see that your son or your daughter is out of the norm, please call the sheriff's department or the police department so they can send an intervention specialist in and enroll your kid in some of these programs that the mayor and the city manager and the council have put funds aside to run. They are there, they are available. If I see my children out of order, I am going to reach out to them. Please do that. That's much better than any of the alternatives that come out of sitting back, allowing things to progress in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the presentation. I think that all of this working in conjunction with one another is going to work well. I think the citizens are starting to see that there's some action behind the blueprint of just, the presentations that we have been putting on. And our city manager has a great plan. I was pleased to see that roll out and to hear our chief to give us some results, because that's what we want to see. We want to see a blueprint plan, and we want to see the action, and then we want to see the results to see that it is being effective. And I know that, some of the programs that have been offered, especially in the PRHA communities, we would like to, keep the engagement going so that people and the community know that these programs are out there, the social programs, the counseling, whatever it's going to take. We can get updates so that the citizens know that, those actions are being effective in what's being presented. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to see some action, and, hope it can spread like wildfire, that there's something going on, that we're not just sitting here waiting for the next thing. So thank you all.
Councilman Woodard, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank you, Ms. Mimi, for your presentation, also Chief Manubot. I do appreciate your approach on crime. We do have to come at it at a multifaceted position because, like my colleagues are saying in different forms, we really don't know exactly who or what's driving this crime. And it's kind of changed. It evolved. I don't want to say the term criminal, but the people who are doing these things, it's kind of changed. At first it used to be older people, but now the crimes are getting younger and younger. So we have to make sure that we are doing these programs. We have to make sure we're doing these events so we can reach these kids, because they're in places that we don't know that, we can't go, whatnot. So also what Dr. Whitaker saying, can we put trauma counselors in our schools, because they're there, and they go through these issues throughout the day. So I love what you guys are doing. Also, I just want to take a note on, can we be a little bit more aggressive with these blighted properties? We're still getting emails on people saying that houses are becoming hangouts. People are just breaking into abandoned buildings. People are hanging around businesses, and that initially grows crime. So we got to really be aggressive on that as well. I think the city manager has been receiving the same phone calls. People hanging out in neighborhoods that's trying to revitalize themselves, because that's counterproductive. If we aren't doing our part to make sure that we are slapping these rent owners or these tenants with fines or any type of sanctions, then guess what? When the developer is building houses across the street, we're pretty much going into the same cycle of turning this neighborhood into a cesspool. So, I want to make sure that we are aggressively still attacking these blighted properties in this area. And also lighting. I know we are waiting for funding from certain bills that may be passed, but for the most part, we got to make sure we take care of lighting, to help deter just anyone who possibly maybe thinking about anything. As I ride through the city, it's dark, it's dim. When we come from Norfolk to Portsmouth, I don't even know if our Portsmouth sign is lit. You feel like you're going into a dark city. So that's not even welcoming. So, we really got to make sure that we are tackling those small things, and it can lead to deterring bigger issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. City Manager Jones, you have the floor, ma'am.
I just wanted to respond to some of the comments, specifically starting with the last in terms of lighting. We have done the inventories for those high crime areas. We've submitted that information to Dominion Energy, and we're waiting on them to give us the cost estimates for that. We're prepared to move forward as soon as they provide us with that information. Overall, we know that there's a lot of crime, and we're trying to address that crime as strategically as we possibly can. You hear about the murders and the robberies, but what you don't hear and see are those that we prevent. We have had a number of youth come to our outreach workers or our youth programs and say they want to change, they need help. And we provided them with a safe place to go so that they're not out on the street. And we have potentially stopped something from happening with them. We do that on a frequent basis. We have parents contacting us looking for ways we can work with them and their children so that we can find an opportunity to address and provide safe havens for them. We have contacted the Commonwealth Challenge Program. We're going to be meeting with them to see if we can get some reserved spaces for the city of Portsmouth so that we will have some place for our youth to go. And then in addition to that, for any youth that's interested, we're going to provide a way that we can keep them connected so that they can avoid the temptation to do something wrong. So everywhere we can find those successes and prevent another life in this community, we're trying to do that. But you don't hear about those cases. You hear about the ones that we can't stop, but there are plenty that we are stopping.
Thank you, ma'am. And Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Just last point, the elephant in the room that we haven't mentioned is this issue of how are these guns getting into our city? And we know that this whole issue of gun control and persons who have this fear, but yet we allow these weapons to come into our communities, and we fight to maintain these guns, which in many cases they have out-armed the police. And so I think if our citizens really want to address that gun violence issue, then we got to look at our gun laws, which this nation has the most guns per capita than any nation in the world. And Virginia has origins with gun violence. And so if you really want to deal with it, we got to deal with this whole issue of the guns that are in our neighborhoods and our allowance and love for them.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Terry,
One more thing. I'm sorry.
City Manager Jones, you have the floor.
Sorry, one more thing. I would be remiss if I didn't respond to Councilman Dr. Whitaker's last point about the guns. I know this is not talking about the broader issue of guns, but I was just advised that last year, 2021, there was a number of 179 guns stolen from cars and put on the street. That's 179 illegal weapons on the street. To date, we have had 15 stolen from cars. So we're going to be doing some public announcement in terms of please secure your weapons, do not leave them in your vehicles, because those weapons are adding to the problem.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Terry, ma'am,
I don't have anything else to say.
you don't have anything else? Well, thank you.
Saving my energy for the next one.
Thank you for your comments. And Madam City Manager, you may move forward.
Good evening. I am here to discuss the American Rescue Plan Act. There were some follow-up items that needed to come back to council for clarity, and I'm hoping to receive that on this evening. What we're trying to accomplish here are the proposed allocations that council had already agreed on and had approved. So we are coming back to show you or to get direction on how you would like to allocate those funds for the approved projects that have been brought before you. One would be the senior tax relief, the senior care incentive, the universal basic payments, and youth COVID incentives, and further action and future action. So the first is the senior tax relief. The senior tax relief, this particular slide is just giving you some information as it relates to how many seniors have been in this program. This is historical data. If you look 2020, 2021, you will have those numbers, but it goes from 2014 to 2021 so that you could see the actual participation. We spent about $1.2 million in the senior tax relief outside of the veteran relief funds. But for senior tax relief, the 1.2 million is about our normal expenditure for that. The senior tax relief eligibility. So this is the list of comparables. So you can see what Portsmouth, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Suffolk does. For Portsmouth, the max is $50,000, but it starts at 30 to 50 as a combined income not to exceed. So on the average, they do about 62 to 67. What the city manager, what we're recommending is a combined income not to exceed $67,000. To Councilman Moody's point, we have not done this for years to make a determination of where we need to be now that we are in 2022. Combined net worth. Our net combined worth in Portsmouth was 175. The other localities pretty much have it at 350, and that's exclusive of your home not to exceed $350,000 combined income. Just as a note, based on the direction given by council, if this is the desire of council, we would come back with an ordinance that would approve the dollar amount threshold for income. Okay. Senior care incentive, council has approved the 1.27 million for the senior care. What I wanted to do is just show what the total population is now as of 2021. The age group for seniors over 65 is, 14,197. And what we have here, we're expecting, what we would like to do, or what we're proposing, is $100 per senior. From the Portsmouth Health Department, the estimated vaccinated seniors is about 12,000. I just rounded it up. It was 1188.88. So what I propose is to give each senior an opportunity to receive some type of gift card for $100. It would be you would have to provide evidence of being a Portsmouth resident, proof of residency, of course. Application requirement, we will make a small requirement, and you must be vaccinated. Citizen direct payments. Council has approved 2.3 million. I really want to make sure that this is explained well. There are a number of households that could receive the direct payment, one direct payment, one time. So the 2.3 million would provide a direct payment to 4,600 households, a one-time $500 direct payment. And this would be administered through the Department of Social Services for an ALICE group, which is the asset group that falls under a threshold of about $43,000. So if your household income is $43,000 or below the threshold of the ALICE group, you would be eligible to receive this benefit through social services. Recurring payments. So here you have recurring direct payments, which would be these families would get $500 for 12 months. And that is $2.3 million. So it would cover 383 families at $500 a month times 12 months. What I wanted to bring to your attention is that the state, Commonwealth, actually for a pandemic emergency assistance fund, they gave a one-time payment of $907 to eligible TANF households, which were 505 that we had at the time that we looked at this information. They provided those payments as of January 31st, and anyone who was eligible at the time received it. So it was about, when I talked to the interim director, she said it was about 510 families received from the city of Portsmouth this $907 one-time payment. Staff recommendations here for the direct payment would be, we would like council to consider both. Administer both programs simultaneously with a pilot program for the recurring payments. In other words, if we provided a one-time direct payment for the Alice household category, we could give that to 4,000 households with recurring payments for 50 families of $500 for 12 months. Those two would equal the $2.3 million if we run this program together. So instead of the 383 one-time families that would be for 2.3, we would be able to provide 50 families with 1.8 million, and then 4,000 families would be the difference. Okay? So that's our staff's recommendation.
Excuse me, Ms. Terry,
Oh, I'm
ma'am. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How did you, why 50 families? Is that just the number, or
No.
with the recurring payments? City Manager Jones.
The 50 families, we felt that we could monitor the 50 families starting from when they started the program to when they end the years, and in between, looking at how that's assisting them, identifying what ways that we could also help them to increase their revenue by give upskill jobs or whatever. We felt that that was a manageable number, that we could do some additional work to figure out what it would take ongoing to help them stabilize their income.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yeah, Ms. Terry, the TANF allocation from the state, those 510 families, is that included in the 4,000 or the 50 families, or is that an additional 500 families?
So those 500 families was a completely separate pot that was administered by the state. So that they were addressed by the state for whoever was in the program in Portsmouth. So that didn't come out of our pocket.
Right.
That actually came from the state.
Right. What I'm saying is, will they be a part of any of the 4,000 households or the 50 families?
If they qualify, because with one of the things that I think our previous director mentioned, that there are some things that if you're on TANF, an additional dollars may mess up your benefits, may overstate your benefits. So that's why the program will be run by social services. There may be some who qualify, even though they got the 900, they still may fall under the Alice category, because it may just be for specific, maybe health insurance, maybe something else, versus additional dollars that they would receive from, benefits that they would have received from the city. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So youth incentives, council approved $230,000 budgeted. This would go for the youth that are in current programs or attend this youth programs that we already have for the city. So would it be a Portsmouth resident, attend recreation programs, they must be vaccinated. It can be used to waive fees or gift card incentives as long as they're vaccinated. And because we have programs that are already established, we took that information from the programs that are already engaged with the city. And so some of those kids, like we have some young ladies that are in dance class, they can't afford the fee, their mothers call, so this would assist them in the relief of some of those fees so they could engage in the after-school programs.
Excuse me, Ms. Terry. On the direct payments, the dollars that we had just discussed, is there a vaccination requirement for all of those recipients?
Yes. The second allocation is for future discussion. And recommendation for second allocation, staff review, reprogram, and realign projects for future discussion during the May through June council meetings leading up to the July 2022 second allocation. Identify any additional needs for the organization before any further discussions are made relative to the second allocation of ARPA funds. The reason we are requesting a future discussion on these items because we had additional items that have come up. One of the things, these are the lists that council has seen on numerous occasions that we are still trying to get direction on, but we want to bring them back. And the reason we want to bring them back, because we have some additional requests that may adjust the allocation or the categories that we've identified from future discussion.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
How will the infrastructure bill funds impact any of these projects? Have we looked at that yet?
Madam City Manager.
Yes, we continue to look at that because data continues to roll out on those programs. But so far, what we have discovered is that they will be administered through grants. Some of the existing grants that we've already had success in applying for, we will be submitting grants for those programs for our different infrastructure. Because of a couple of these on here that we'll discuss when we come back are time sensitive in terms of us getting the work done. We want to make sure that we're moving in the direction of some of those infrastructure projects. But again, we're going to be aggressive in going after the grants, and we continue to get additional information. So we'll keep you apprised.
So the city will have to apply to the state.
Correct.
To get the grant. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And with that being said, because some of the projects have a time constraint, these are some additional requests that have arisen that may be able to support or redirect those dollars. Additional needs have come up. So there's the health department construction of the building. There's a request for $350,000. Housing assistance for citizens in distress, which we consider that as a rent relief program that we don't have currently, $700,000. Increased funding for organized civic league organizations. So we definitely have organizations in the community. They can apply for grants within the city during budget season, but we're looking at restructuring that because we have a lot of civic league organizations that don't have the funding to be able to do some of the projects in our neighborhoods. Senior housing, developing a program to assist seniors in property repair. Several of the calls that I've received are from people who say we have some seniors in our neighborhood, they need some work done on their homes. This is where we would really love to bring in our minority vendors and contractors who could actually work and live in our neighborhoods, who could assist the seniors in repairing their properties. COVID-19 awareness events. We have different events that we would like to push that continue to end the spread of COVID-19. Indirect impact of crime assistance to victims. Again, we have that as we would like to consider, or for council to consider, some of the things that the victims go through that are the trauma, the impact, how do they get started again. We have victims that need assistance with medical. There's just a plethora of things that go on after someone has been victimized. Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Senior Center, the Lexington Place expansion. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just had a question on the direct impact of the victims' crimes. Does the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office have some type of program that they assist with victims of crime?
Yes, there is a program, victim witness protection. There's a program for if you're a victim of a violent crime, they will assist you in some funeral arrangements. And there are a few grants that we have. But again, just because of the situation in Portsmouth, we wanted to direct some funding there.
Thank you.
Question.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
The Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Senior Center. So PRHA is federally funded and they generate funds. Why are we putting 1.2 million?
City Manager Jones, you have the floor.
We met with Ed Bland yesterday, and he presented the Lexington Place project and indicated that he was looking for assistance from the city because the funds that they had fell short of what was needed to complete the project. This is just a placeholder because that's just an initial conversation that we've had. We will push to find out how much, the federal government is going to provide, as well as potentially partner with the Redevelopment and Housing Authority to apply for grants that could fit that crime bill that's out there in terms of reducing crime. And so that's a placeholder on there. Again, we're going to flush all those numbers out, and we just wanted you to have an understanding that these things have come up since we've last talked. And so we will be redeveloping that list based on some of these things and the direction we get from council, so that we're leveraging these funds in the direction that gives us the best impact.
Okay, because I know that they generally report a profit, and if there's some way we can take these funds and put them to some direct payments, or, rather see that.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't know.
You may
can go
continue,
ahead. The Mount Herman Cemetery, I'm sorry, Mount Calvary and Lincoln Memorial Cemetery assessment and construction, that could be a part of the sewer infrastructure that we are waiting to come back to council with those dollar amounts. Craddock Skate Park relocation.
Councilwoman Lucas
Yes.
Burke, ma'am, you have the
Yes,
floor.
Thank you. The Mount Calvary and Lincoln Memorial Cemetery assessment recently saw a Senate bill that was passed for blighted properties, which included cities' opportunities to apply for grants that would allow them to get funding to fix their cemeteries. I'll get the number for you. I left it in another bag, but I think there is some grant funding that we might want to look at. And I know Sherry Neal may be tracking that bill that recently passed, and provide an opportunity for cities to use some funding. And if we can get ahead of the other localities trying to apply for that, it might work in this instance to help offset some of that funding.
Okay. Oh. Last slide. Does anyone have any questions?
Councilmember Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The crime reduction strategies, isn't that something that we supposed to incorporate it now, so we can help stop some of these killings and violence that's happening throughout our city? We supposed to be giving this money to these organizations, and I know you guys are working with partners or whatnot, but it kind of extends a little bit past the 7 or 8 that I guess you guys are working with. Like I said, we have our leagues and everything else. Isn't that incorporated in this crime reduction strategy?
It is for the next allocation.
Right, but I mean, just this weekend, we have so much going on, and like I say, I read your proposal, I seen your slide, but for the most part, it's a little bit more. We need more hands on deck of what's going on in this city. And I know you guys are working with about 8 or 7 organizations. But
26.
26, okay. Mm-hmm. But we need a little bit more than 26, to see what's going on out here.
City Manager Jones?
In response to that, if you recall the conversation we had about the partners, this funding was for existing partners in the community that are already doing programs. So to the extent that they're already doing programs, there's no need to rush without thinking through how to best leverage these resources, because these are not new partners that we're talking about.
Right, I understand the guidelines, and those are the people I'm talking about. I'm not asking for us to get with any new partners. I'm talking about the existing partners that we already have. Are we doing what we're supposed to do for them to get the funding to touch the kids in the community?
Well, I'm not sure that was a commitment of this council. That's something that staff recommended, and we put it on the table. Council has already allocated the funds we currently have to date. So there is there's another allocation that's coming in July. So unless council changes something that we've already started working on, there are no funds to allocate at this point. That would be something that we discuss at the next allocation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Terry? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
for your presentation. And Madam City Manager?
Just to summarize, we have 3 city manager reports before you this evening. The first one, 22-36, being $46,000 for the circuit court. These are grant funds that will be used to provide circuit court clerk offices with resources to help preserve and make accessible permanent circuit court records. The next one is 22-37 for $109,000 for the fire department. This funding will be used to purchase 1 replacement medic unit for Portsmouth Fire Rescue and Emergency Services. And then 22-38, which is $18,000 for the police department. This grant funding will be used to purchase new polygraph machines and video photo equipment for police. I'll be happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Madam City Manager, for your report. We've now come to the item with City Council liaison reports. And does any of my colleagues on council have anything to report at this time? Councilwoman Lisa Lucas-Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have the opportunity to attend the last Hampton Roads TPO meeting on behalf of the mayor, who had a conflict, and it was quite interesting meeting. One point that we do want to bring to the attention, there is a Senate bill and a House bill by new House delegates that's an issue of concern. Want to make sure that we know Senate bill, House Bill 297 and House Bill 1059. We do have trackings for that, which could potentially impact our Hampton Roads transportation. Interesting meeting, and I'm sure we'll have an email that will give you more information and updates on those.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other council members have anything? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yep, we had a meeting today at 2 o'clock on the disparity study, and we are in the process of scoring the vendors.
Thank you, sir. Council members, we are in need of a closed session. I will need a motion and a second. And I need you to use your electronic device if you wish to speak on the motion. Councilwoman Lucas-Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
I move to go into closed meeting A pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.23711A.8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel employed by the city regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice, specifically regarding code enforcement, and B, pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.23711A.1 for the purpose of discussing appointments to boards and commissions and the performance of specific appointees to boards and commissions.
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. And we will need a motion for second on the electronic. We do have a motion. And now it is time to vote electronically. So please cast your vote electronically. And Madam Clerk, you read the vote?
Mr. Barnes is, okay. We are in closed session by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
We are in closed session. So we have the need to come out of closed session. And Councilwoman Lucas-Burke, would you please read the motion?
I hereby move that each council member certify that to the best of his or her knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed motion just concluded.
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. It has been duly seconded. And council members, would you vote electronically, please?
The closed motion has been certified. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This concludes our work session. We will reconvene our regular council meeting at 7 p.m.